What if your faith was your greatest power-up? In a world where battles rage both on the screen and in the soul, where XP is earned through struggle and transformation is the ultimate endgame, this is your sanctuary. Welcome to God, Games, and Gains, the podcast where spiritual growth meets squad-based discipline, where the weight of the world is lifted, one rep, one prayer, one power-up at a time. I'm your host, Coach Matt, fitness guide, faith seeker, and gamer at heart. This is your call to level up, body, mind, and soul. Faith, fandom, fitness. Let's get it. Welcome back, misfits, gamers, truth seekers. Today I want to talk about addictions, because addictions is something that I've been dealing with since I was a kid, and it's not an easy thing to deal with. And I know a lot of people also deal with addictions, and there's a lot of reasons for it. And I'm not an expert here on addictions. I'm just here to tell you my experience and how it's manifested in my life. And for me, without looking for a cause, it sort of started when I was a kid, because without going deep into it, I can go into it in another episode, but there's a lot of emotional trauma built up from childhood, neglect and not being seen or heard, feeling this way. And as I got older, it started more when I was a teen, and it started with food and games for me. Like, I was very addicted to World of Warcraft and Call of Duty. And they both gave me something that filled a hole or a void that I had in my life, from depression and undiagnosed ADHD combined with the trauma. And I would turn into these games like World of Warcraft because it gave me a sense of accomplishment and it boosted my dopamine. It made me feel good. But not only that, it also gave me a community. It gave me people that cared about me. It felt like a family, so I would show up and I would spend almost all of my time on there. I remember at one point I had like a full year of in-game time built up because I was playing so much. And not only that, I was playing Call of Duty in the background when I had flight times. And I basically just couldn't turn off wanting dopamine. And these things did help me. Like, games helped me a lot with emotional distress. But this addictive personality got worse as I got older. And then I started turning to alcohol. And once I got into alcohol, I got into drugs. And once I got into drugs and alcohol, I was chasing women. And you can be addicted to anything. You know, the addiction isn't the substance. It's what it's giving you. And these things were all giving me something that I needed, that I wanted. It gave me dopamine. It made me feel good. All of those things. So I would chase them constantly. And when I didn't have them, I would feel terrible. And when I didn't have them, I would be angry. And for a long time, I didn't want to admit that I had addictions, that I was addicted to things, that I had these issues. But if it wasn't one thing, I would have another thing. I was always using something. And for me, this wasn't really a good thing. It made me feel bad because my family also has a history of alcoholism. And it's killed my aunt and it killed my dad. And that was really a wake-up call for me. And I didn't stop using alcohol or drugs or anything after these things happened. It was more of a wake-up call in the sense that I was like, could this be me? Am I going down this path? And for a long time, I said no. But a part of me knew that if I kept going, I would also go down the same path. And the thing that was the tipping point for me, and why I now don't drink or do any drugs, and I try my best to not lose to the gaming addiction, is a very emotionally traumatic experience. And after this happened, it was a big fight between me and a family member, and it caused a lot of turmoil in my life. And at this point, I started seeking God more. I started turning to God again, and this is why I always say God never leaves you. Because I didn't know that I needed to turn to God. After this happened, I was still using drugs. I was still drinking. I was still smoking. And at some point, it stopped feeling good. It started to make me feel worse. And around the same time, I started having this pull, this draw to go and learn about God. So, apologize. This actually started before this was happening. It initially started, and it was like a feeling that I needed to learn about Judaism. I can't explain why that was the feeling. And I ignored it. And then all of this happened. And then I kept using the drugs, kept drinking, smoking. And eventually one day, things would pop up on my YouTube feed. Things about people debating religion and talking about God. And there was this one video that popped up. And it was a Christian and a Muslim talking. They weren't arguing, they were just talking. And after the video, it was about 2 minutes before the video ended, I had this feeling inside of me. It said, learn about Jesus Christ. You need to learn about Jesus. And then after this video ended, this really weird thing happened. It's kind of magical, in fact. Someone knocked at my door. And I didn't know what it was. Usually I don't answer my door. I usually just ignore it because I am socially anxious, or I was, and not anymore, but I was more socially anxious. And I mean, why would I want to answer my door? But I answered the door. And it turned out to be a neighbor of mine. I call it a neighbor, but it's someone from down the street that I'd never met before, never seen, never talked to. And she came to the door and she said, I don't know why, but I needed to come to your door and tell you about Jesus Christ. And I need to tell you about the Holy Spirit. And I said, come on in. Because it blew my mind that happened. And she told me about her experience and how she was lost throughout her whole life, and how her husband died, and she blamed God, and she was mad at God and angry with God. And one day, years later, she was just so angry with God and breaking down on her living room floor, and suddenly she felt the Holy Spirit enter her, and she felt this profound sense of peace. And that's when she turned to Jesus and finally accepted God into her life. And I said, wow, that's an amazing, profound transformation, something that happened to you experience. And I told her my experience and how I felt like I needed to learn about Jesus Christ, and she appeared at my door. And that wasn't the only time something like this happened. And I hadn't quit drinking or smoking or these things yet. Okay, so later on, more things were happening. It took more confirmations for me to finally start reading the Bible again. And there were more things later on down the road. But the next thing that happened was I felt like I needed to learn about Moses. And I don't know why. That was just the feeling. And this day, everything just seemed to be lining up for me. I don't know why. It was such a good day. Everything was happy. Everything just seemed to be falling into place. And I went to the grocery store and I was listening to my guidance, and I walked in and these plants were on sale, and I wanted a houseplant. I wanted houseplants. So I went and checked them out. It was $5 for the plants. Why not? And I grabbed one that looked really cool. It was purple and green and it looked really nice. There was another one sitting there, same type of plant, but it didn't look so good. It looked unhealthy. And God said, take that one. Take that plant instead. I said, okay. It looks similar. Why not? Both purple and green. Sure, I'll take that one. So I took that one, put it in my cart, didn't think anything of it. Got to checkout, and the person at the counter said, hey, why did you grab this one? Why didn't you grab a better looking one? Were there no better looking ones? I said, yeah, but I felt like that's the one I was supposed to take, so I grabbed that one. And she scanned it through, and this plant was called Moses in the Cradle. And it blew my mind. And so I started looking into Moses. And more things like this happened later on. Can't think of anything off the top of my head. There was another one with a girl at the park where she was just there every day. Person I'd never seen before, just randomly there, sitting in the same spot, and my dog would always run up to her. She was headphones on, didn't look like she really wanted to be approached, was in her own zone. And my dog would always run up to her, but I would always walk past, even though something inside of me was saying, stop and talk to this person. Stop and talk to that person. And after about a week of this happening, I was walking by one day, and she was sitting in a different spot, under a bush. And I thought to myself, just walk up. Just go. So I walked up. I said hi. My dog ran up to her. She's petting my dog. And I said, can I sit with you? She said, yeah, why not? Go ahead. So I sat down and we were talking. And she's telling me deep stuff into her life about pain and trauma, and essay about how her family didn't trust her, and really going deep into this conversation. But throughout this whole conversation, she was telling me about how God really saved her and how she really trusted in God. And she was asking me these questions about things I believe and stuff that people don't normally ask me about. And it was a really weird experience, but I felt so at peace being there. And this person, we were covered in mosquitoes, and she was asking me, hey, why do you swat at the mosquitoes? And I said, well, I don't like when they bite me. It doesn't feel very nice. She said, oh, I don't mind. Their life too, and I can share. And I thought, oh, that was an odd thing. Interesting. But then she continued, and she continued talking to me. We were talking about the Bible and how the things that we need to learn and things that help us in our life are in the Bible. And she said, have you read it? And I said, no, not yet, but I keep feeling like I should. And she said, you should. You should read it. And it really struck me that God can really work through people. And it's really true that those who are most lost will be the ones that God tries to pull back. And there's resistance. But God really is always there with us and always wanting to help us. And back to my addictions and stuff. So at some point when I was deepest into the depression and the anxiety, and I hadn't been getting help with it yet, and I'd been using medications. I was on ADHD medications too, and I felt like I needed to stop using them. I was like, this doesn't feel like me. When I use this stuff, it makes me not feel like me. I feel like I'm losing myself. And so I stopped. And I stopped the drugs. And I stopped the drinking. And what really did it for me was, now I remember, was one night I was hanging out with my friend, and we'd gone out and we were drinking and smoking. And that night I ended up vomiting. I hadn't in so long, but I did. And then it made me feel so terrible and drained. And what happened after was I got sick for 10 days. 10 days after that. And it was like a purging. And a part of me was like, why would I want to go back to this thing that made me feel so bad? And now that I think about it, I didn't stop the ADHD medication yet. This timeline's a bit off. This happened, the ADHD medication was something I stopped. It would have been about a month after that. But I stopped smoking, drinking, doing drugs. Well, other than the ADHD medication. But after that happened, after that month, I was like, this really isn't making me feel like myself. Once I stopped doing the drugs and stuff too, it was more clear to me. And I was like, why am I even using this too? It's making me lose my creativity. It's making me lose who I am. So I stopped. And things in my life got hard. Really, really hard. And life started to feel hard. And it was at this point in time that I really started to turn to God again. And it didn't start by me reading the Bible or learning more about God. It was more about a personal connection with God. And at this point, it was me writing a lot and not fully understanding what I'm hearing from God and what is my ego, and not fully understanding that yet. So I just want to clarify, this timeline's a bit off. Me stopping the drugs and alcohol happened about a year before. No, about 10 months before I met this girl in the park. But after, this was the month after that neighbor appeared at my house. No, it was a month and a half or two after that. Sorry, I don't know if the timeline's important, but I'm going to let you know anyways. I feel like it might be important. So I had to stop school because it had gotten too stressful for me. And at this point, then I was on income support and I wasn't in a good place. And I was depressed all of the time and feeling so terrible. And after a few months, I didn't have income support anymore, and I couldn't afford the place I lived in. And I had to move out, and I was ashamed, and I didn't tell the person why. I just said I have to move next month. I set everything up. I have a storage unit. It's $50 a month, and me and my dog moved into my car. So I lived in my car for 5 or 6 months after that. And honestly, it was a great experience for me. I'm not going to knock it. It is something that I wanted to do for a while because of these YouTube videos that I see of people doing it. So in a way, it kind of was something that I asked for. It did bring me a sense of freedom, and what it also did was allow me to have a big transformation. I'm going on a tangent here, but come back to the addictions here. So focus back on the addictions. So I think all of this is relevant actually, so I'm just going to keep going with it. If you're still here with me, thanks. Appreciate you being here. But back to the story. So at this point, I was living in my car, and a lot of things wouldn't have happened if that didn't line up. Like I may not have started the coaching business here and helping guys lose weight and get back aligned with their life, and I wouldn't be here. If the way I see things is if each experience you didn't have wasn't necessary, you wouldn't be where you are today, and you wouldn't be the person you are today. And that is a beautiful thing. And for me to be where I am, and I love where I am, I had to go through all of these experiences. So back to being in the car. So me and my dog were living in the car, and it felt weird at first that my family is concerned, and people would ask me, say I'm homeless, and I mean, in a way, I guess so, but I would always say I wanted this, and my situation's better than a lot of people's. I have a car. I have a car to live in. I don't have to be on the street, which is so much better than a lot of people get the privilege. I get to be close to my dog. I get to move around. There's so many things to be thankful for about it. And yeah, it was tough. And I ended up going further into debt a little bit because things were tough for that time. But it allowed me to grow a lot. It allowed me to get closer to God, because everything in my life, everything I was focusing so much on, didn't really matter anymore. And at this point in time, I started going to church because I kept driving past this church that was in the area, and one day God was like, you should go there. And it happened about 3 times over 3 weeks. And then I finally said, you know what? I'm going to go in there. And things like this keep happening. And I go in. And the things they talk about are so relevant to my current situation. It's so weird how everything just lines up. But I go in there, and I was feeling pretty down, and the service was over, and I was just sitting there, and I was thinking, it was Father's Day, this day, and I was thinking, God, because I was remembering my dad, I was thinking, God, I really need a hug right now. And this fella comes over and he sits down beside me and he goes, "Hey, my wife said to come over here and pray for you." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Sure." And then I told him my dad had passed, and he gave me a hug, put his hand on my shoulder, and prayed for me. And I thought, wow, that's crazy how much God is listening and how God always comes through. And then this experience with the person in the park and me feeling like I should be reading the Bible but not doing it and not listening, that happened a few weeks after that. And that was about a year ago today. So that's where I am now. And the closer I got to God and the more that I learned about God, the less that I wanted to keep doing the other things. The less that I wanted to keep chasing women, the less that I wanted to fall into lust, the less that I wanted to do drugs, the less that I wanted excess. Because I wanted to be closer to God. And when I did those things, it took me further away. It was harder to hear God. It was harder to feel God. And this is really the reason that God teaches us the things he does. It's not to keep us in a box. It's not to not have us live life. It's because these things hurt us. These things hurt our soul and our mind. But we do them anyways because we tell ourselves they're making us happy. They're giving us something. But it's because when we want those things, it gives us a high, a dopamine high. And when we don't have it, suddenly we want it again. But if you abstain from these things for a short amount of time, you'll notice that the need for it goes down. And you see how hard it was to stop using those things. And it makes it harder for you to go back because you don't want to go through that withdrawal again. And it's really tough to go through. I know. It's so hard to go through. But on the other side of it, it's so much more beautiful. And God will help you through it. God is always going to be there. Your experience isn't going to be exactly like mine. But when you open your heart and your mind and you pray to God for help, God will come through. When you knock on that door, God will answer. So seek God. Seek him. Ask him. Talk to him. And open yourself to him. Open your mind. Open your heart. And be true. Because all that really matters is your intention. If your intentions are good, you don't just think that you want to open to God. You have to be true and say, God, I need your help. Please come into my life and help me. I surrender to you, God. I open my heart, my mind, and my soul to you. Please protect me from the evils of this world. Please help me fight this battle against this darkness. Please guide me. I'm open. I'm listening to you. I'm feeling for you. Thank you, God. And God will come to you. It's not going to be easy at first and obvious, and maybe it won't ever be easy. It's always going to be tough, because on this journey, God's going to take you through turbulent waters, because it's going to feel turbulent because it's not your normal anymore. Because now you have to heal. And God's going to help you heal. But that healing means you have to grow. It means you have to get stronger. It's like going to the gym. In order for us to get stronger, we have to put ourselves through pain, as they say, but it's not really pain, it's discomfort. We have to exercise the muscles to the point that they're stimulated enough to grow. And that means getting to feeling the burn. And I know that's not science-based anymore, but you know what I mean. We have to feel the burn to get the gain. It's the same way with our spiritual growth and our emotional growth. We have to do reps. And God's not going to give you more than you can handle. But God's going to give you what you can handle. Let you heal and grow. Give you a rest period. And then give you more to grow for. Because you prayed for strength. You prayed to get through this. God will take it away. But then he needs to make you strong enough to keep it away. To ward it off. And that means you have to get stronger too. And that's why choosing God is not easy. But it's such a blessing. So if you're struggling, know that you can turn to God. There's help out there. There's people out there to help you. And I say this because I asked God for help, and then things like therapy lined up for me. Options opened up for me, but I had to take them. I had to go out and do the work. I'm still doing the work. So remember that when you ask God for help, opportunities will arise for you, but you have to be open to them and you have to be ready to do work. It doesn't mean you won't be helped, but you have to take one step at a time, one small step with faith. And then another one, and then another one. Because each step you take with faith will open up another step. And your path will be lit at every step you take. You may not see the end from this point. But every time you take a step, God will show you the next one. I hope this helps, guys. I hope this made you feel less lonely, and I appreciate you guys for being here today, because you didn't have to spend this time for me, and I know this was a long one, but your time is valuable, and you chose to spend it with me. Have a great day. Stay blessed, guys. I love you. God loves you. Bless. Thanks for joining me on today's quest. If this episode gave you something to think about, or something to lift, share it with your squad, leave a review, and spread the mission. And if you're ready to go deeper, to train with purpose, grow in spirit, and build real strength that lasts, join our free Discord community. Because your solo grind doesn't have to stay solo. Until next time, stay sharp, stay faithful, and never stop leveling up.